The Beulah Park story begins with Adam G. Grant, the man in the black bowler hat second from the left, who is considered to be the greatest businessman in Grove City history. In 1889, Grant petitioned the village of Grove City to create the Beulah Addition housing development on 80 acres of land west of Broadway, on farmland once owned by the town founder, William Foster Breck. Grant named the new addition after his little daughter, Beulah. This is a map of Grant's addition in 1995. Punter, the right half, is the original 15.5 acres of the village. The middle is what is now Broadway, formerly Columbus and Harrisburg Pike. To the left is Grant's new addition. The bottom is Grove City Road, also known as Grove City Pike or Dutch Pike. Beulah Gate. Grant added a beautifully wooded park they called the place Sundela Park. Soon the park expanded to include a 1/4-mile racetrack. Franklin County fair officials were impressed and held their annual fair on the site intermittently until 1918, when it was permanently relocated to Hilliard. In 1922, the grounds were sold to the Capital City Racing Association. The next year, 1923, Beulah Park became the first thoroughbred racetrack in Ohio. This mural hangs on the side of the Grove City Tavern at the corner of Broadway and Jackson Street, which is a little alley. The tavern sits on the spot of the old Shed Row bar that served horsemen and local customers for decades. Shed Row is an old term for a double row of horse barns with individual stalls facing each other with a walkway in between. This is on the right-hand side of the mural. It shows the transition from horse and wagons to motor vehicles. That building right there with the Firestone sign, Hansel and Gretel's Firestone, is now Sharp's Auction Gallery, just north of Planks. To the left on that mural is the interurban electric streetcar known as the trolley, like in the original picture with A.G. Grant. It ran on a track down the middle of the street. The only spur on that line that went all the way, I think, to Mount Sterling was just about right where this painting starts, and it went down Park Street to Beulah Park. By the way, the first building that you see there in that painting on the left was built as the Grove City Savings Bank in 1923. And that building is still there today, and it is now Grove City Nutrition. In the early years, thoroughbreds were transported to Grove City via train. A wooden ramp was built next to the Grove City Depot on Front Street, where local teenage boys were paid to unload and walk the horses down the 4 blocks of Park Street to the barns. Another history note, the Grove City Depot is on display in Century Village on Orders Road. The Historical Society moved it there a few years ago. Also, a Western Union station was located in the depot, and some of those artifacts are still in the building out at Century Village. My guess is that for years, the results of the Beulah winners were sent down that line of Western Union. In 1931, pari-mutuel wagering was allowed for horse racing governed by the Ohio Racing Commission. It improved racing and attendance. In 1933, Robert Dienst bought the track and expanded it to a half-mile. In 1937, the track then expanded to a 1-mile oval, which was a really big track at the time, and that's the way it remained until the very end. In 1940, a daily track survey showed Beulah Park fans came from 19 states and 238 cities. The Sport of Kings was entering its heyday. It's a joke, get it? Heyday. I'm here all week, folks. All right. This full-page ad was the type of ad that appeared in all three Columbus newspapers: the Columbus Citizen, the Ohio State Journal, which later combined to become the Citizen Journal. I'm sure many of you remember that. And the Columbus Evening Dispatch. Yes, we once had 3 broadsheet newspapers to bring us daily printed news. This ad hangs in the Grove City Welcome Center and Museum on Park Street. On May 15, 1954, Beulah Park set an attendance record of 11,772 visitors, and Beulah Park became known as Little Saratoga after the famous New York racetrack. Beulah Park was indeed a cottage industry of its own. Almost every Grove City family had someone who worked there. The track also supported the agriculture businesses in the area. Local farmers provided oats, hay, and straw to the horsemen. During the 1920s and 30s, during the Depression, the Grove City Farmers Exchange, which was right next door, right across the way there, sold grain in sacks with this kind of cloth. It is identical to the cloth that they would put the grain in. And the reason they did that was because during the Depression in 1920s and 30s, women didn't have money to buy material for things like curtains and dresses. And so their husbands would buy the grain, and in certain patterns, there were certain patterns, and then they would use them to make things out of. Even residents with garages were known to stable a horse. Grove City had people who worked as ushers, exercise boys, stewards, valets, cooks, and others. It was truly a family affair. I think this picture actually appeared in the Columbus Dispatch in the early 1950s. State law declared thoroughbreds could only race 44 days a year. So Beulah Park held boxing matches, motorcycle races, quarter horse races, and other events to make money. In the 1970s, for example, they held musical concerts, fireworks shows called Blast at Beulah, and volleyball tournaments. The most famous extra event that they used to do was the Big Bear Hot Air Balloon Festival, if any of you will remember that. But during the 1950s, visitors just kept coming to Beulah. Women came dressed in their finest, movie stars, politicians, baseball players such as Pete Rose. He was here quite a bit. Football coaches such as Earl Bruce. I don't know. Earl Bruce, and even the most well-known jockey in racing history, Eddie Arcaro, visited Grove City. Eddie, by the way, was the only jockey in racing history to win the Triple Crown twice. In 1941 on Whirlaway, and in 1948 on Citation. The track's owner, Mr. Deans, was well aware that Beulah Park was an important part of Grove City identity and, as I said before, a family affair. He kept a pony named Oscar in one of the barns that any Grove City kid could come and ride. That is me. He was a great pony, too. Bareback is wonderful. Okay. By 1983, attendance was tumbling. In that year, Beulah Park was sold for $4.5 million and renamed Darby Downs. It was a bad move. For a while, things looked better for the track. Darby Downs was the first Ohio track to offer simulcast wagering at the Kentucky Derby. But it became apparent that the former patrons did not recognize the name change, and publicity dried up. And so did the attendance. Another unfortunate thing happened that year. Decades of Beulah Park's racing records were lost when they were removed from the property. Laurel Anise and I found that out in 2008 when we were co-writing our first book on Grove City history. We arranged an interview with the track officials, and when we asked to see some of the old photos and some of the records, it was explained to us that several years before that, they had all disappeared. In 1986, Charlie Ruma purchased Beulah Park for $6.5 million and restored the name. He poured $12 million in renovations into the grounds. Thoroughbred racing continued in the spring and fall meets, and Scioto Downs, with its standard-bred sulky races, would hold their meets in the summer in between the Beulah meets. Some of the men who worked in the mutuals at Beulah Park would go to work in the evenings at Scioto Downs. By 1997, Beulah Park was searching for a new way to attract visitors. They found it with two blonde sisters who worked the mutuals and started a simulcast on their own. Soon the Beulah Park twins, as they were called, Katie and Jenna Felty, were heavily promoted and gained a national audience. The twins did that simulcast from 1997 to 2009. They were on mainstream national TV several times and appeared fully clothed in Playboy magazine. They even had their own bobbleheads. Wagering at Beulah Park doubled. By 2010, the wheels were falling off the hay wagon. Even an invention called America Tab, a phone and computer wagering service created by Charlie Ruma and others, didn't help. That year, Beulah Park and its over 200 acres of land were sold to Penn National for over $20 million. The death knell chimed. 2 years later, in 2013, Penn National announced it was moving the Beulah Park license to Youngstown, Ohio. They did not want it to compete with the Hollywood Casino on Georgesville Road on Columbus's west side. On May 3rd, 2014, the final race was run at Beulah. It was the same day as the Kentucky Derby, which to racehorse fans is like the Super Bowl and Christmas combined. An estimated 5,000 people attended. For over 90 years, Beulah Park Racetrack was a large part of local history and commerce. It's gone, but the Sport of Kings and Beulah's famous Daily Double will never be forgotten here in Grove City. So that is the presentation. And I do want to walk over here just a little bit. If you haven't already come up and seen the artifacts, a lot of these are my personal collection from that belonged to my grandfather, who was a trainer and worked in the mutuals and owned horses and lived a life with horses. There are things like some veterinarian supply. If you have a horse, you'll know that you have to force medicine down their throats. Horses cannot expel anything that's in their stomach. They can't vomit. So it makes sometimes a little dicey when they get grain stuck down in their throats. Anyway, we have a boot jack here for the jockeys that could just take their boots off very quickly. That's a jockey saddle right there. You see, it's not very big, not compared to an English saddle, let alone a Western saddle. These do not belong to me. Leanne takes good care of these over in the Grove City Welcome Center and Museum, and some of the other things will go back over to the museum too. Here's my favorite though. Sorry to be walking. No talking to jockeys. Okay, I'll entertain a couple questions. I hope I can answer them. Anybody want to have a question? You aren't horse people? Yes.
In one of the slides, when they were taking the horse down the ramp, I saw the name. I thought it said John Galbraith.
Well, that's very possible. John, a lot of people around here in those days knew John Galbraith. My grandparents knew the Galbraiths and were invited to dinner several times. And I don't know if was something that like on a piece of equipment or a side of a building or something like that where you saw the name Galbraith. But yes, there was a lot of connections between Grove City Horseman owners and his place out in the other part of the county. And of course, you know John Galbraith was from Mount Sterling. So anyway, any other questions?
What is the trophy?
Now that was one of my grandfather's trophies. Actually, and it's missing. The horse is missing a tail. It broke off years ago. But I put it there as an example of some of the trophies that they would win for races. And that one actually is from River Downs. There was a big connection between Beulah Park and River Downs in Cincinnati, and then Beulah Park and Thistledown, the other racing track in Cleveland. There are only three thoroughbred tracks in Ohio. That's highly, highly regulated by the Ohio Racing Commission. Okay. Yes?
This is fully random, and I don't know. Somebody
Okay.
said that the reason that, like the Grove City dogs or was named after the fact that they used to race greyhounds. So
That's true.
I was told, which obviously is probably not true, that they were raced at Beulah Park. Right?
No. The dogs were never raced, to my knowledge, at Beulah Park unless somebody just happened to bring them over one time and let some of them loose, which I doubt. The Greyhound track was now where the site today of Our Lady of Perpetual Help church is. That I didn't add the greyhounds in, but again, we at our museum, the Grove City Museum, we have a display of the few artifacts that we do have from greyhound racing because it was really only open part of 3, maybe 4 years in the 1930s, and the state shut them down. There were Chicago mobster types that got involved in dog racing. One of them was over at West Jefferson. I was told by an old guy years ago who lived there. And that track was built but never opened. The state shut it down in West Jeff before they ran the first race. So, but yes, but it's true that the high school decided that they had just started playing basketball and they wanted a mascot. And some men who were involved in the local men, they were all local men, with greyhounds, gave a bunch of money to them. And so we'll call them the Greyhounds. And yeah, that's absolutely true. Anybody else? I don't know. Am I out of time yet? Oh, okay. Dance. Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to know, talking to the jockeys,
Uh-huh.
were people trying to get tips from them?
Oh boy, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. When I was a child in the 50s, and then I was a teenager in the 60s. Those were the years where I spent, most of my time with my grandfather over in the barns. And because I won't go into it. I loved horses and still do. If I could still have mine, I don't. I had to give them up. But anyway, yeah. I forgot the question. I went sidetracked. I'm sorry. Dog jockeys. Yes. It was more open, and there was a kind of a way you could access a little bit, getting near a couple of the barns where the jockeys were, and then they had their own little building where they had to go in, and before a race happened, they had to carry the saddle. They had to go and stand on a scale, and if they weighed too much, whatever the weight was set, they couldn't race. If they were light, they would put metal pieces in their pockets to get to the proper weight. And there's lots of stories about jockeys trying to lose weight, bless their hearts anyway. And they were all very small men, about 5 feet tall, very thin, but mighty. Hats off to jockeys, because we did have a couple accidents over the years at Beulah where a jockey or two died, and very sad. It's dangerous.
I mean, you look at that.
They are.
That saddle, and they have to control I'm not sure how much horses weigh, but a lot. They have to control an animal who weighs a lot.
They weigh about 1,000 pounds.
Yeah. I thought, is it 1,000 pounds? Yeah, with their legs and.
Yes, and the thoroughbreds are high strung, and so they get excited sometimes, and then they may rear up. There's all kinds of things that can happen. Beulah also, I think I mentioned, had times when they would race quarter horses. And if you don't know anything, I used to have quarter horses, and they can run really fast for a quarter of a mile, and it's like you turn them off at a quarter of a mile, then they just, and that's it, they're done. So, but with sulkies, the standard breds, with the little carts, that's the standard breds. They were over at Scioto Downs. Scioto Downs opened in the 50s, about the mid 50s. And again, a lot of Grove City people were involved in Scioto Downs. They all knew each other. And of course, in those days, Scioto Downs was just a cornfield, and nothing was out there. It's part of the Hartman Farms. One more question? Anybody? No? Okay. Well,
Why don't you tell us, since you have time?
Huh? Oh.
That you wrote, your latest book.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, yes. Over the years, I was the editor of the Southwest Messenger, and I wrote endless amount. Some of you may remember my stories. I wrote hard news and features and all kinds of stuff. And I love that whole aspect of creating something. But other than the columns, I wrote a lot of columns, and you could be, more free in that format. But it wasn't until a couple years ago that I decided to tackle writing a novel. I had never done that before. And it's a real process, because a novel, nothing qualifies as a novel until it is 60,000 words. So I started out with an idea. I wanted to write about a river town. Love the Ohio River. And I did a whole bunch of research. I always do lots and lots of research for my history books and nonfiction and fiction. And I found Steubenville absolutely fascinating. Steubenville was one of those places they called Little Chicago, because during the 20s and 30s, they had a lot of crime. People coming down, gangsters, mobsters, whatever, coming down the Ohio River with illegal liquor. They had these things where they would brew beer on some kind of boat out in the water so they wouldn't get caught during Prohibition. There was a lot of shenanigans going on in Steubenville. So I researched that, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to write about Steubenville. Steubenville is also the home of Dean Martin, the singer. And that added, to the whole thing. And so I made it into a murder mystery. And the murder actually occurs many years before, but a woman just retired as a history teacher actually solves the murder mystery of her father. And so that was tons of fun. And so then I thought, well, my husband kept saying, oh, you got to keep writing this. So I'm writing the sequel right now. And and the murder in that book takes place in like last couple months ago. So that one has been a whole lot of fun too. I'm almost done with the first draft of that one. But I'm the kind of person that will edit. It will take me almost maybe 10 months to edit the draft because I like it to be just so. So, yeah. I started writing when I was in 3rd grade, and I just haven't stopped yet. So, and that's one of the reasons I love being a trustee here in Southwest Public Libraries, because I love books, and I got my first library card when I was 8 years old at the old Grove City Library. You weren't allowed to have, in those days in the 50s, you weren't allowed to have a library card until you had gotten to age 8. So when I got to be 8, rode my bicycle to the old library and got my library card. And I can still see it in my mind where everything was. And how many of you really remember the old library? Okay, I figured most of you would. I still have people that'll come up to me today. We opened this in October 2016, right, Donna? And people say, I really miss the old library. Bless its heart, anyway. So, but it was time for it to go. Anybody else?
Jan,
Carol.
can you tell us about the discipline that you do that makes you successful?
Oh dear. Well, I don't know if I can describe it. No one's ever asked me that question, let alone in front of a group of people. I really think it's something that's kind of bred into you somehow. And just real quickly, I had got a little bit of the bug for writing back in 3rd grade because my dear mother had spent some time in her late teenage years writing a series of children's stories. And she wrote 3 or 4 of them, and she had put them in something. And I think I found them in our attic when I was about, 10, 12 years old. And I thought, oh, this would really be fun, to write children's stories. And then she took a correspondence course from the famous writers' school in Massachusetts. And she finished it up and she got her diploma. My mother was never able to go to college. Her family couldn't afford it. But she was always very, very proud of that. She kept a framed picture of it in her sewing room. But I always felt that I wanted to write. I had things I wanted, to put down on paper. And I was encouraged in school. In 8th grade, I won the Read Magazine contest, short story contest. And then in high school, I was asked to write for the school newspaper, the Crimson and Blue. And I hadn't thought about that, but a friend of mine said, come on, you can do it. I know you can write stuff. So I did that. And then I get to college, and my sophomore year, I thought, you know what? I think I will. I minored in journalism, and I majored in television broadcasting. And I've not regretted it one little bit. I'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking of stories, or I'll write dialogue in my head in the middle of the night. I'm sorry. I bet that's what I do. I mean, it just comes to me. And, I want to put you on the spot, Leanne, but Leanne is another really good writer. And I don't know if that's the way she feels about writing. Yeah, that you've always wanted to do it. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, And some people will say, oh, I can't write anything. I just, no, don't, no. Uh-uh. So, anything else?
You worked with CBS for a while.
NBC.
What was NBC?
I worked for 2 NBC affiliated television stations. One for 6 months in Rochester, New York. My husband was working for Kodak as an engineer at the time. And then we moved back here to Columbus, and I worked at Channel 4 for quite a while. And then I got into Warner's cable TV system, which became a whole national experimental television thing called Cube, which was the first interactive 2-way television communication where you hook your TV up to a box. It was called a Cube box. A few of you might remember that. And you could participate in a show, like yes and no answers. There was a bank of 5 other buttons that you could press. And we started that in December of 1977. And about 5 years later, they had to shut it all down. They had built a couple other Cube network stations, one in Mason, Ohio, and another one. It just became so incredibly expensive for them that they had to stop. But what was cool is sometimes Warner Brothers would send us early releases of movies. The very, very first Superman movie came out in 1977, and they sent it to us, and a bunch of us were able to sit there and watch. That was one of the movies, Superman. They had to reshoot that because the first time they cut it and ran it for the first time, they could still see the strings from where they would have Superman's cape. Now, this is not going to do on the big screen in movie theaters. So they redid it. They did the flying scenes over again and put them back together and released the film. So that was really something. We had a lot of people from New York fly in to the Cube station on Old and Tangier River Road near campus. And we got to see some pretty big stars now and again. It was fascinating for a kid like me from Grove City. Like, oh, really? Big name stars and singers? Okay. Anything else? Now that I've told you my life story up here. Yeah. Oh, hi, Bill. Sorry.
When the transition came with all the activity from the racetrack,
Uh-huh.
moved,
Yeah.
there had to be support organizations like farriers, owners, trainers.
Yeah.
Have any of them survived locally?
Well, the farriers, the local farriers, probably did all right now that I think about it. You know, I continued to have horses into the 90s, 2000s. And there are a lot of horses around here. There are a lot of 4-H horses. The Scioto Downs was still running all the time. They still are running, you know, their meets. They seem to be able to find enough work. Now, I would imagine some of them may have moved up to Youngstown. I have no idea. But the farmers who hay straw, that kind of thing, again, there were a lot of horses still around here at that time, and they could sell their grain. There are a lot of places around here that could sell grain, hay straw. And the people who work, like the cooks and those kinds of folks, found other employment, probably had to go to Columbus, you know, to work. We didn't have that many restaurants, trust me, until the 2000s. And then we started along Stringtown Road and parts of Broadway. We started to get more restaurants, you know, here in Grove City. But you know, some people just retired, went off to a different profession. But, you know, again, having horses is kind of like riding. You love them and you want to continue to work with them. And you want to be around them, you know. And that's the tough part when you don't have them anymore, even though they're big 1,000-pound animals and you must care for them twice a day, feed and water, clean out the stalls. That's no fun, let me tell you. I had lots of manure that I had to move around. And that's just part of it. And expensive. If you have a horse that not breaks a leg, but has certain problems, Ohio State University has a wonderful veterinary hospital there. Lots of money has been poured into it over the years. And we had a sick horse one time. And my husband would load it up in the morning before he went to work, put it in a trailer, took it up to Ohio State, waited till they were done, brought it back to our house, which was way out in the country south of here. And he did all this in his suit and tie, because as soon as he was done, then he went to work. Crazy. Just crazy. Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure being here. Like I said, it gave me a chance to write a whole new speech about Beulah Park and to think about some of these things. And this is Russ Haskell. He's a videographer, and he does a lot of stuff for me for the Historical Commission. And so we're going to make this into an oral history, and we'll have it over at the Grove City Museum. So this gave me an opportunity to do all that. I've been wanting to do another oral history. So there we go. My pleasure.